really real enough. Other rappers is delirious. Yeah, it's really that serious. Better holler if you really feeling me. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna live in abundance. I gotta keep it 100, ayy. If you don't like it, then fuck it, ayy. We gonna win in the end, yeah, we gonna. I gotta keep it 100. We gotta stop all the stunting. You know we coming from nothing. Yo, you talking about money, you bluffing. We gotta do something different. We gotta change how we live in. We gotta do better for women. We gotta do better for children. We gotta listen to victims, whether Jewish or Muslim or Christian. It doesn't matter your religion. You gotta stand against the system, or else you just another villain. How you just sitting there chilling?
Peace, everyone in the Spotify world. First and foremost, thank you all so much for this long season. I realize this is actually probably my longest season I ever did. I looked at the log and I did 62 episodes. That's insane. But everyone that has supported me and all the new supporters out there, thank you so much. The small supporters, you know what I mean? It'd be so much to me for all the new people that are giving me a chance. And we're back after 2 weeks. A lot of connection issues and stuff. People hit me up and were like, hey, what's going on? I thought you said you had some other stuff coming out. And I'm like, oh, well, things happen, guys. But I'm so happy that people DM me. And we're back. And this is the final episode of the year. And I'm so excited to have this guest who I've known for a while. I actually went to school with Ace. He's tonic. And Ace does a lot of great work around the community, a lot of nonprofit experience that I feel that a lot of people can learn a lot from. Ace was also a part of the board in my nonprofit when I was working for Life in My Days before it dissolved, unfortunately. But a lot of things that goes on, especially around labor. I've seen Ace around. I've seen Ace around LGBTQ issues. I've seen Ace around a lot of things. So I was really excited to get this guest on. And somebody asked me, why do you know so many awesome people? I really don't know. I just do. So without further ado, I give you Ace.
Hey. Yeah, we've known each other for a bit. We've known each other, who's Satonic, since at least 2014. So at least 10 years. Yeah, we've known each other for a while. Yeah, you've seen me do a little bit of everything from ticketing to rallies to just testimonials, and I started young, and they haven't shut me up since. So you're right. Yeah.
Well, I was talking with Norman from Q Plus. I think it was 2 episodes ago, and I was explaining about how, I don't know if you noticed, that you were actually one of the people that actually made me comfortable with coming out, because I saw that you were part of the Gay Straight Alliance and everything, and I was like looking at you on Facebook and seeing how you moved and all this stuff, and you were a lot like you, Kirill. I can't name them all, but everybody that have known me before I came out, you guys are definitely the ones that inspired me to come out, and
that's a great thing. That's where I started doing public advocacy. Now, being fortunate to own my own LLC, which is the acronym ACE I was telling you about. So awareness through communication and education. Started at the age of 14 and doing testimonials, because I found, not only in that regard, but I was dealing with a lot of dynamics of not being able to be open about who I was as a Black trans man in the queer community, and expressing who I was, and a lot of obstacles I faced, that I wanted to make sure that I could be a person that people could connect to and be affirmed by, because I don't want anyone to feel that they're alone in struggles that I faced as a young adulthood, don't have the resources, they don't have connections, and they don't have any visibility. when I was young adults, now as an adult, really say I have a future. I have a big thing was concerning for me as a young individual, saying I want to make sure that I can affirm other individuals because I didn't feel I had really anyone that could that I could connect to affirm me when I was younger at first.
Right. Right. And being that young, um, that is just incredible and being so brave, especially the way we see how this country is reacting to it now. Um, um, it's something that I can't even imagine being someone that came out at 20 something years old and being trans and also being trans is totally different from a lot of people, especially the straights. They like to say that trans and gay is the same thing. It's not. It's totally different. Like I can't even imagine what your struggle would be like. I'm only pansexual, and just to come out at that young is just, especially like in the 90s.
Yeah. Now I'm in my mid 30s,
Mhm.
and there is still so much conversation that isn't being had, and that's why I've been fortunate to be a resource in that regard, and navigating different topics. Like even now, we don't sex education. We still don't talk about it. We still don't.
Right.
We don't even navigate that conversation for
Right.
young adults to talk about the LGBTQ plus community, talk about the trans community, and if we can't build confidence in bringing these conversations up, how are we going to navigate our internal feelings to then be able to express them? And that's a big thing, is everyone has their own journeys, and I was very fortunate that I just, in some ways, some people think I was just very rebellious, and that's how I was able to really connect a lot of terminology very early, and to find community to say, hey, the way I'm feeling, I now can associate being trans as that feeling, because people ask, well, how young were you when you knew? And I go into talking about, I was 7 years old when I really kind of started navigating different feelings and how I was being perceived. And I didn't have this vast vocabulary, but I could full-heartedly feel an essence of who I was, and especially in grade school when we have those conversations of like what going through puberty, and for my school we were divided into young girls and
Right.
boys, and I'm
Oh
going
wow.
into the with these young girls, and I'm like, that's not where I'm supposed to. I'm not supposed to. Why am I not going there into that room across the
Right.
way to sit there to really be internalizing, I am different than other individuals, and what is that difference? And so really kind of being an advocate, I started out doing marches, phone banks with Planned Parenthood, and that
Oh wow, you did Planned Parenthood for a while?
yeah, so
I didn't know that.
that actually is where my my advocacy started off. It really cultivated with Planned Parenthood in New Haven. Met some
Oh
amazing
nice.
people, and did testimonials. If you Google my name, I'm in this bright pink shirt, Planned Parenthood shirt, in my little black tie, marching on Washington for the rights to your own body. And
Nice.
I found that was one way, especially because, as you know, Jamar, I sometimes don't know when to shut up, because
It
and
is what it is.
I love to talk, and I found that was a way. Public speaking was a way to really be a resource, be able to navigate conversations that people just don't feel comfortable having, and being a soundboard in a sense to ask questions that A, many of us want to ask but don't know who to ask, and B, not worrying about the way we construct those questions. Oftentimes, we just don't have the conversations because we don't want to offend anybody, but sometimes we need to start the conversations and we're going to offend everybody.
Right.
And that's where I really, really found if I'm in a space, and especially when I'm doing public speaking, I always go by, I'd rather you ask the question than assume, because we like Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner. Wile E. Coyote would just run off the cliff, and
Right.
you have these assumptions about a certain topic, you may have already gone too far, and you can, and it's even harder to get back. So I really
Right.
started that mindset.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that, because that's just an unapologetic mindset, and that's the way you have to be in order to navigate these conversations. But you do it in such a way where it's like it's academia, but not on like strong academia. It's like you're gonna learn something out of this when you talk to me. You're gonna have something to bring home.
And
in your
it's
mind.
also, yeah, but it's also every time I'm facilitating a training or conversation, I'm learning as well. I'm very much so seen as, yes, the expert in the content I'm talking about, but I'm also learning a part of that conversation. It's a full open conversation. It's not me just slide 3. It's not that type of. It's many people feel it's a negotiation when they go into a training, that there's, okay, you know what you're talking about, so I have to be open to it, and I just have to sign on the dotted line because you're the, and that's oftentimes it's not a contract. You don't just sign it away, you're good. It's, I learn every single time I walk into a conversation, whether I'm training it, being part of a panel, I am learning. I'm hearing from the community of that, all different diverse communities, whether they're part of the LGBTQ plus community, whether they're part of the trans community, whether they're part of the BIPOC community. There is very much so much. And one thing I always do, we are life learners. There's not an end to learning. There's not an end to expanding knowledge. And that's where I don't like, in any regard, people thinking that I'm going to talk at them in a training. I talk with you in a training.
And that's absolutely dope. And I can see from off of my experiences with you that it has came that I never got the idea that you were not approachable or anything. And there is a lot that I can learn off of someone that gives a demeanor of just, that's really engaging, And I, for myself, when I first met you and we were sitting at those tables, like I was like, how do I get to know this person? And I don't know if you remember when I brought a smoothie up and showed you this place that had a smoothie. That was like an excuse of trying to like actually like
I remember you tried a place, a new place down the street near Housatonic, and you came up to me, you're like, yeah, trying this new place, and I was like, I'm just thinking, like, is the smoothie good? Like, you can talk with me. You don't need a smoothie to talk with me. And I do remember that. I remember you probably remember the nickname I got at Housatonic was Papa Ace at that time, because I was we have like the tables when we're talking, people are like, what tables are you talking about? In the cafeteria, one of the cafeterias at Housatonic, we had like a cluster of tables. We would hang out, like a group of us throughout the day would have this cluster of tables. We would just decide to plop into and play games, and then we'd go to class and come back. And I remember I got that name because I was like, Jamar, are you supposed to be in math class? Is that your science? I was like, and I was always the one to check, like, we're having fun. We can always have fun, but we're in a place of learning. And so you got to stop playing the board game, or you got to stop playing Yu-Gi-Oh or Magic or whatever game we were playing, or we were playing Mario Kart. We would hook it up to the TV. We were doing so much stuff.
Doing a lot of shit.
We were doing a lot of, we were just self-entertained. And it was very interesting because there was a lot of conversations at that table that were just so eye-opening to myself and other people, and that I could bring about to the table. And I remember at one point I was sitting, and I really want to remember the gentleman's name, and we were sitting there talking about very politically divulging into the trans community and religion, and how in certain religions, doing anything to the body is defacing the body, is looked at as a sin in regards to that. And we were talking at first about piercings and tattoos, and then it somehow divulged into the trans community about surgeries and so forth. And then I remember bringing up the conversation and talking about, well, what if an individual is trying to feel whole? And that's something in particular that you may not know of that individual from just looking at them. And I remember going down this route, and this gentleman was like, well, I don't know anyone who's trans. I don't have a good depiction of someone who's trans. And I'm sitting there, and in my mind, I have this little character just laughing, rolling around like, Ace, are you gonna do this? You gonna open that up, just like, so you do now. And I remember him talking, and he's like, well, I get, and it was a great conversation. He's like, I don't know if I can have an opinion because I don't know someone who's trans. I don't know someone who I can have a back and forth conversation with to really navigate my thoughts on this topic. Right. And I pretty much said, we can have this now. You can have this conversation. You can navigate this topic because you do know someone who's trans. And I remember he's looking at me. He's like, no, I don't. And I'm like, I can guarantee you know someone who's trans. And he's looking at me very bewildered, waiting for me to tell, like, yeah, you know, our friend down this, like, from math class or public study, like, and I was like, me. And he, like, looked at me, like, very, very bewildered, and was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, well, I was born female, and I identify as male. And he didn't. I remember I think he might have been there, and I pulled out my license, like with my gender mark and everything. I was like, no, like I was born biologically a woman, and I identify as a man, and I am a trans man. So I'm breaking down these terms and everything to him, and it was like, poof, like, yeah, you could just see his mind just explode.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And it really brought about more conversations because we have these very diluted depictions of the trans community for a lot of people. I remember growing up when, if any conversations about trans individuals were brought up, it was the Rocky Picture Horror Show with heavy makeup, corset, and if you're in the trans community, you want to do that, do you? I am not going to walk around in a corset and tights. That's just not my thing.
I gotta say, they do think that, and then when people find out that I'm pansexual, they're like, "What? But you don't act gay?" Because I guess I have a very masculine mindset, I guess. But
outward expression.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is it's oftentimes there's a lot of different levels to a person. Again, we have all these intersectionalities where we're not just black, we're not just men, we're not just short or tall or brothers or sisters, whatever that may be, we have so many things and so many different identities that encompass us. And me being trans is just one of them. So walking into a room, I am very much so have, as all of us do, have these assumptions put up. So I walk into a room and it's like, okay, it's a person of color, it's a guy, facial hair, masculine. I'm mainly masculine presenting. And one of those things that you talked about earlier is oftentimes we have this version of sexual orientation and identity. They're just molded in together. And orientation is who you are romantically or sexually attracted to, compared to identity on who you identify as and your gender you identify as. So I always use those examples where it's like gender identity is when you lay your head down at night, it's who you are going to sleep, as far male, female, like non-binary, what that is your core, how you feel. And then orientation, sexual orientation, is who may lie next to you in that bed. And that very much so is just meshed together. And it's not the same thing. And it evolves. It evolves to, like, perfect example, if you're looking at those intersections for me, I'm a trans man, I'm pansexual, queer, demisexual, like those words. I mean, there's tons of words. And then I go into even more. So I'm a brother, I'm an educator, I do many different conversations.
More words.
Yeah, like, and that's the thing, is there's so many depictions that are just completely not accurate. And that's why another reason I became very vocal and have stayed vocal, as you know, is because people immediately associate trans individuals, just like they associate, in a lot of ways, Black individuals, as threats. When have I become a threat? Like, I remember there's a meme, and there's like a very young kid, and then a young adult, and then adult, and it literally it's a young Black gentleman, and underneath it says, "When did I become a threat to you?" Just like for myself, walking into places because of my skin color, but also because of my identity. When did I, as a trans man, become a threat? And why do you see me as a threat? I remember a perfect example of this. By the age of 14, so I'm still young. I'm not able to vote. I'm not able to drive a car. None of this. I remember going to different amusement parks, whether it was like Six Flags or whatever, with friends who I was out to. I would tell them before I went into the bathroom that I was going to the bathroom, because I would say, "Hey, Jess, I'm going to use the bathroom. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, please check on me." Because by that point, I already faced verbal and physical harassment from people because I did not connect, that I was not associated to the gender that I was supposed to be in that bathroom, or how I looked in that bathroom. And as a 14-year-old, already feeling and already having to be concerned about being violated and harmed using a facility, it just blew my mind at that point, and then really just increased that kind of like flame to be like, we need to talk about this.
I appreciate you sharing that story. Those are stories that, I appreciate you sharing that, because that's personal, but it's important, for people to understand this, especially in like what's happening right now, where people are, especially in the notion, let's just talk about our community real quick. The Black community. Let's just address the Black community as a whole, and that's gay, trans, straight, every Black person as a whole. what are some of the myths that we hear from our black counterparts, that the gays have more rights than black people, but that's not true. If you look at legislation all around the country, and especially the states in the South, and those that actually pass bills to harm healthcare away from trans kids and all other drastic things, abortion, that's not true. It's not true.
Yeah, and
And
that's
there's a
where
lot of stigma.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. No, there's a lot of times where I feel within our communities we are divided because we need to have something to combat in a sense. So it is frustrating, like you're saying, where it's like the LGBTQ plus community has more privileges than the black community. And that's frustrating. Have you personally found anything that has come up personally for you within the community that you have said? I know I have a personal example is I speak too white. I've been told by my black counterparts I speak too white or I dress too white. And I also get that from other communities. But it I always feel there's like, well, kind of the dynamic of I don't want to be bullied, so I need to bully someone else, or I need to
Right.
push against another community or a part of the community I'm in so that
Mhm.
I'm not the target.
Yeah, I have met that issue with a lot of people in our community would say that I'm not black enough because of how I spoke or because of the music I was into, which you know me, I was into a lot of metal. You saw my phases, my band t-shirts and everything. I still got my band t-shirts. I still love them, but I like polo better now. But but yeah, I
It
definitely
evolves.
felt
It
that.
evolves.
Yeah, but the biggest part is that what I'm seeing now is that when they find out that I am. This is for the straight black people, by the way. I have beautiful queer friends that are black, and it's a lot of them. So that's about you guys. But for the straight black people, I have felt the understanding that they think that being queer and black or being trans is black is not a black thing, and that's just a whole colonialism issue, and it's still embedded that needs to get broken away. Um, so it's we could go on for hours about just the stigmas and how can we combat those stigmas, because there's a lot, even with this whole Kanye shit right now, but there's a lot that we could go for hours on.
Yeah, there's many different things. I mean, talking about race, talking about gender, talking about class. I mean, there's so many levels you
Right.
can talk about. And I don't know how in depth on like personal content you want me to get, but that's another reason why I got into public speaking is because, and I always want to preface it, whether doing trainings or whatnot, is that this is my story. These are my personal experiences. That does not make them the experiences every trans individual faces, every black person faces, every like man faces. That's the dynamic. Is one big thing that I faced when I was younger, really navigating how I identify as a trans man. What one example that was pushed against me, and this is going to be more in depth, so I was like, you can always pause
Mhm.
me if the material's too TMI.
No, it's fine. We
Okay,
have an
yeah.
unfiltered
And I was like, just go.
platform here. Yeah, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. Is when I was going through high school, at 7 years old, I already knew I was different, and then by high school, I already was able to, because of my advocacy work, really build content on saying yes, I'm a trans man, and starting to be very vocal about it. One of the pushback I got from individuals, and a personal example I had, which that time I thought was a friend in high school, which I found very much it wasn't, was I went to Shelton High, and if you know Shelton High, those who may be listening, it pretty much.
My father went to Shelton High. Fun fact.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, literally, Shelton High School is a just cement building with very few windows outside of the main rooms, but on each corner of the building, you have these stairwells, these main tier stairwells, along with the center. And in the corner of those stairwells, it's this steel metal solid door and just cement. I mean, it pretty much it looked like
sounds like prison.
It felt like a prison in some ways. And this personal example, I was walking during class. I got a pass and saw my friend walking, so I was walking with him, and I was talking with him, and I disclosed about being trans, and he then started to a couple other times previous to that. And then we went through this stairwell. So we went through this solid steel door. Their class is happening, so there's no one else in the hallway. And this individual, who I thought was a friend, started this conversation at the top of the stairwell saying, well, you're not a dude. Like, you're not a dude. You just need good dick to figure out you're a woman. So this individual, this is where, if you got to mute that button, whatever, this individual, who I thought was a friend, tried to rape me in this stairwell. Started to touch me. Is like, well, I'm that person that needs to change you, and literally, I'm in this moment. I know that there are hundreds of people around, but none of them can hear me because I'm in this solid slab corridor, and I am having somebody tell me that they know better than myself on how I identify as a person. This is in high school. And this was the first time I had someone try to do attempted rape on me to figure me out, to make me know who I was as a person. And there's this content that even now, as adults, we see other people trying to decide what is best for us. Just this year, looking at this year, this is the most anti-LGBTQ plus political year ever in history. Over 400 anti-LGBTQ plus bills being put in place, some of them being passed, that do not allow for me to even exist in some states.
Right.
And
right.
We're in 2022 and this is happening.
Right.
And it's really sad to have these conversations and then have people willfully ignorant. Now, I want it very much so, willfully ignorant. Like, yes, there's some ignorance about some stuff, and that's why conversations are happening. And that ignorance, that unknown ignorance is there. But there are people sitting in positions knowing that my rights, my safety, walking out every single day as a trans man is being affected. Where I, as a person, not telling anyone else, not affecting anyone else, by being a trans man, being a trans individual, not affecting anyone else. But when I walk outside every single day, I have the chance of being killed based on that. We saw that with Club Q. We just saw that.
Yep.
Those individuals were there to just feel accepted, to feel loved, to feel accepted, to be affirmed. And someone went in there, not ever being affected by them, not even knowing these people, and killed them.
Yep.
And it's sad to think about that with the LGBTQ plus community, with the Jewish community, with the Black community, with women. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And that's why these conversations need to be had, because we are living without holding these conversations. And because we are not holding these conversations, we are not confident in pushing back on, like, no, that's racist. No, that's xenophobic. No, that, and these fears build up. power is held based on fear. Fear is the navigation for many reasons why there's so much hate on so many different levels.
Right.
And that's one reason I became an advocate, because you've seen some of the conversations I've had. I sit in a room with people that I may walk out of that room agreeing to disagree with, but we've had a conversation and we've opened dialogue. If we're yelling at each other, if we're just screaming at each other, oftentimes you just see people screaming at each other. No one is listening. Neither side is listening if we're just making a lot of noise and no one's hearing the words. And that's where I sit as an advocate and educator. You might not know how to structure those questions. You might not know how to start that conversation. Let's start it now. Because I know half the people in this room, if not all of them, want to ask those same conversations.
Right.
And that's where it starts. Like, you are starting conversations, which is amazing because we need conversations.
Well, yeah, definitely. But sometimes my conversations get me in trouble.
Mine, you too. And that's a great point, Jamar. Sometimes, most of the time, we're not going to appease everybody.
Right.
Some people are just going to be like, oh, he's trans. I can't, just turn this off. This is not content I want to hear. That's not content I want to talk about. Just turn it off. Because I know we're not going to agree with each other.
Right.
And that is an interesting thing, is because I've sat in rooms where we all assume, we all prejudge. And even as an advocate and understanding that, I have to sit down in some rooms with some people that in many ways just want me dead, and have to sit down and have conversations and not immediately shut off. And that's something that we find as individuals, especially now, we do immediately, because we're with everything. Technology is amazing. It's such a double-edged sword. We can talk to people hundreds of thousands away by a mere just putting in a couple numbers. We also can show within mere seconds so much hate to somebody that they go into that 40+% that try to commit suicide in the LGBTQ plus community from hateful words that you can just write or say on a screen and disappear.
Right.
And that's where the same thing. We are like, no, next. We're bored. Next. I don't want to talk about that. Next. That we can shut off so much quicker to a conversation than we ever could, based on where we are with technology and how we're being programmed.
Right.
And it's fascinating and terrifying all at the same time.
It is. And I don't know where even to start at. You know what I mean? With that, but dialogue is the only way. And if you can't reach them, you can't reach them. But that doesn't mean, and if you know you can't reach them, that doesn't mean that you have to keep them in your orbit. No, never again. You don't have to talk to them. Like, why? Like you don't have to talk to them. Like, chosen family is a good tactic.
It is, especially during the holiday season.
Especially on technology. The block button is therapy. I'm gonna have to put that like on a hashtag or something.
There you go. And it can be. It really can be, because we've grown up. I mean, we've grown up saying, well, if our blood family doesn't accept us, who's going to? Right. And we can't look that way. It's the same thing. Oh, if we don't, through high school, through college, through a lot of even as adults, if this group or I don't excel in this field accept me, or I'm good at this, or I'm accepted by this group of people. Same thing. I remember high school cafeterias. Who were you going to sit next to? What were you going to eat? What were you going to talk about? Even before you even stepped into high school, what am I going to wear? Am I going to be able to purchase the right clothes? Am I going to be able to hang out with the right people? Am I going to be able to excel in this sport or this club? Because that's going to ostracize me from a whole other group of people. And there's this constant tug of war that we have with ourselves and with others that no one's starting conversations because we're too scared to, because we're basing it on fear. We're really just like, okay, I'm not going to be the first one because I might be the first one and then I might be completely ostracized.
Right. And that's exactly the mindset of America. The fear of being ostracized. But newsflash, once you already get ostracized, you don't give a fuck.
That is very true. That is extremely true. I was very much so ostracized at a young age. I like a perfect example. I am okay with saying personal stories because I have found their way to connect to people. Again, that doesn't mean if someone doesn't tell you a personal story that's they're any less. They don't have to. Right. They don't have to go out and rally and march in big events or something like that. They might be that one person that affirms that other person in a coffee shop. That can have the same effect and the same empowerment as me in a pride parade and me talking on the air or whatever it is, because I always do this dynamic of the ripple effect. I go into a coffee shop, and a perfect example, like you said earlier, Jamar, I was very fortunate and I'm honored that I was somebody who made you feel confident in coming out and expressing that you're pansexual. I was able to pass that on to you to be able to affirm you, which now you do for someone else. Excuse me, and you affirm someone else, and it passes on and it builds this hope, and it builds this collective of community and of confidence and engagement, and we need that. And the thing is, if we don't agree with each other, okay, we don't agree with each other, but there's a difference when you disagree with each other and walk away. Then a difference when you disagree with each other, you walk away, and then you pass a bill, or you vote for a bill, or you stay silent when a bill happens, because silence still is siding with the oppressor. Let's not forget about that. That will then harm me as a person. I don't affect you, but you then disagreed with me, and then you're like, I don't only disagree with you, and I'm going to just let you go on your way. I'm going to pass a bill where you can be arrested, or you can be murdered in some place. You can be killed, and it would be fine. In other regions of the world, for not even just being trans, for being out as gay, that is illegal. Illegal to be out as gay. There are so many things that a lot of times we just haven't learned about. Like one big thing, Christopher Columbus. Yeah, I remember growing up.
The OG from 1492.
Yeah, this amazing person who found America, and now as an adult, I have the ability to engage in content that wasn't given to me as a young kid. Saying, "Wait, this person isn't so amazing." Not amazing at all. Genocide, murder, rape, pillage, destroy. Wiped out. And we are still two young individuals showing this content without talking about the murder and the genocide and the willful ignorance. That's where willful ignorance comes in. We can talk about the history. I was just talking about the GI Bill. After the GI Bill, where individuals coming back from war were getting these GI Bills so they could own property and have this ability to start a new beginning. but we never heard about that GI Bill and the discussion of that and the discrimination that went along with that. You might have been part of the world, but if you were black, you might not be able to get that nice suburb house because you were black. Yeah, no, we can't. We still have restrictions, and we are not taught this. We are not taught any of this. And
I literally tell people, like y'all could go around and have these conversations, thinking America was this, America was that. We know the real here. My grandfather was born with no voting rights. And he could have got lynched just for whistling at a woman when he was a teenager. So you want to tell me there was a great time?
And that's a big thing in school. In school, I know that we had a large amount of time. I know I did. Large amount of content was on the Holocaust, which again, do not want to belittle in any way. But the reason that we had so much content on the Holocaust is because it clearly depicted the U.S. as the good guys.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about the amount of slavery we had in the U.S., the GI Bill in the U.S., all the things that the U.S., we weren't the good guys.
They also banned Jews for a while.
We banned Jews. Oh, yeah. It looks like, the U.S. has always loved you. No, they have not always loved you. They have not. Exactly. And it's sad because we are given only certain content. Same thing with religion. Growing up Protestant and going through Christianity and now doing content.
You were an enemy of the Catholics?
Yeah. And what content was talked about in the church was very much so, in many ways, constructed for reasons to power, to only tell you the things they wanted to tell you. You read the Bible. I mean, there are horrible things in the Bible that we have done that have been fully depicted. And then a lot of times, the thing that people tell me is like, well, you are a sin. You being trans is a sin. And I'm like, well, that shrimp cocktail you just had at that table is a sin too. You shouldn't be having to shove us. You watch that football on TV, and that's a pig that you're throwing around there. That's a sin. And then you're wearing, this is multi-woven fabrics. This is not, so that, I mean, we can't just pick and choose. Whether it's religious, whether it's certain views, we can't pick and choose. Same dynamic. Perfect example. When I started off doing work with Planned Parenthood, I remember marching on Washington. I was one of very few outwardly expressed masculine individuals who were seen by others as men or identified as a man. And I remember a gentleman was on the side, and he like kind of waved me over and was like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "What do you?" I'm like, I'm confused by his question. I'm like, "I'm marching." He's like, "Why? Why are you?" And he didn't know I was trans, but he was like, "Why are you marching? You're not a woman." And I'm like, "Well, I have a mother. Like we have all been bared from a womb."
Right.
I have an aunt. I have a grandma. And this affects them. Unbeknownst to him, it affects me too, as a trans man. But indirectly, for a cis man, that individual, your mother's affected. Maybe you have a daughter or a niece who's being affected. You're the best friend across the street who has a daughter who plays kickball with you every day because you're her best neighbor friend to hang out with. That affects her. Right. So why am I marching? Is because it might not affect me directly, but indirectly it does. And that's why when we talk about many different things, the bystander effect literally talks about, and we're taught even at a young age, nope, don't speak up. It's not your place to speak up.
1950s.
Yeah, not your place to speak up. Well, whose place it is? We're gonna just let everyone. So when you're in a store or something, and someone's just using slurs against someone else or belittling somebody else or talking down to someone else. You just sit there and shut up. That's what you're told. It's not your problem. It's not your place.
Right.
Someone else will take care of it. It's not for you. That same mindset in 2000 and I think it's 2015, a young woman, again, I'm putting cautions out there for people who are listening.
I'll make sure I have the cautions up.
Young woman went on spring break, went to the beach, broad daylight, was drugged, was with a group of people, was drugged by a drink, and was raped by multiple people on the beach in broad daylight, recorded with literally people walking past them, hundreds of people, arm's length away, and no one did anything. And the only reason that those individuals were caught was because that young woman saw that video up on the internet. Didn't even remember the situation happening.
Jesus.
Saw that video up. And you can Google it. I mean, people love to question me. I'm like, Google it. It's unfortunate. It's real, but it happens.
Yeah.
Shit happens.
Yeah.
And luckily, those people got arrested and convicted. But think about all the people. How horrible for that to happen. And hundreds of people are just walking by, saying nothing. And if she didn't see that video, she wouldn't even know better. That's the same thing that happens with trans individuals, similar to trans individuals. In Connecticut, I think it was specifically Connecticut or Massachusetts, a trans woman freezing, looking for shelter, went to the Salvation Army for shelter, saying, I need a place to stay for the night. If I do not, I will die. Was denied shelter and died that evening in front of that building on those stairs, being denied that. That's why a big thing. Salvation Army, they're ringing their bell. It's a religious group, and they're very LGBTQ plus anti. Like, they are very against. Same thing with Chick-fil-A. People drive me nuts with their like.
I have never ate Chick-fil-A ever.
I have not. But the dynamic of like, but they have great chicken sandwich. I don't care.
Nobody cares.
And you should, and those who are and those who say it's like that organization is religiously run, and they're very vocal about it. Many people in the queer community call it the homophobic chicken. Like,
yep, yes, we do.
And they put millions of dollars to anti-LGBTQ plus bills.
Millions.
Same thing as the Salvation Army. So when you're eating that delicious chicken, whatever it is, or whatnot, you are putting money indirectly into the hands of an organization who puts bills out there that want me dead. Yep. And that's
this is the real.
And the concept for somebody that's like, well, it's not. But what about these people who are working here? If Chick-fil-A closed, there would be another structured or like another thing that popped up where there'd be positions.
Yeah.
And that's so frustrating to have to think about. And yes, there are sometimes I will say I do not Google every single place I go to.
Yeah.
To say, oh, well, let's see. Nope, this person's homophobic. Nope, they're xenophobic. Nope.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can't do that every second of the day. But blatant organizations like Chick-fil-A, like Salvation Army, there's a list. Mm-hmm. You can find mostly pretty accessible now because of the
you really could,
that are just anti-LGBT, they're just sexist, they're xenophobic. I mean, blatant organizations that you can see where their money is going toward anti-LGBT, I mean, and it's frustrating to really see how many things and how much information that isn't disclosed to individuals in general.
Right.
I'm fortunate. I'm
Right.
looking. I'm fortunate. I'm looking to hopefully buy a house in the next year. Doing that, I'm looking at what they call a mill rate, which is just like the ratio of how much you're going to be taxed on your house or property you own in a certain town. And I have my wonderful spreadsheets that I have here. Well, let's talk about redlining. People don't. Let's talk about, it's hidden, and sometimes it's not even hidden. And blatant things.
Yeah.
Where someone who has the same valued property in Hartford is going to be the ratio is 73% right now on that property. They're going to be charged
73%.
73% compared to the same valued property in Simsbury at 43%.
Wow.
Because
That's a big
same
percentage.
dynamic of redlining, a certain certain demographic will not even have the ability to purchase houses in Simsbury because of the amount of inequity that is there compared to in Hartford. And then there's, programming, education. This, like, people don't even understand that the prison system most prison systems is a for-profit. So they're looking to funnel people into the prison system.
Yep.
We always
and your
hear
favorite
about
people are probably funding it, making money off of it.
yeah,
Michael
and
Jordan. Oh, did I say that?
and that's the dynamic is when we're talking about whether it's the trans community, whether we're talking about the LGBTQ plus, the umbrella-based community, whether we're talking about the BIPOC community. There are so many things, so many levels of discrimination, so many levels of gaps that are there. And we need to vocalize and continue the conversations to break through these ignorances. And for those who stay willfully ignorant, they don't feel they have power to be willfully ignorant. We saw many people take on power or feel they had power when Trump was in office to be racist, to be sexist.
Big time.
When you have conversations to talk about those discriminations and the racism and the transphobia and all that, those individuals do not have the power. They're not given like, oh, I can be an asshole and I can feel this way. They can, if they want to have that mindset, they have that mindset, but they have that mindset alone and not affecting people who are not trying to affect them anyway. Me, I'm not trying. You want to have that mindset? You want to hate me for just being trans? Have that mindset over there, but don't put into laws that could kill me, that doesn't affect you in any way, shape, or form. And it's something again. And you see that, like, I get antsy about it. This is the thing. If you stay silent, you sit with the oppressor. And you
people don't like that term. They don't like that term. They get mad about that. But it's true.
And that's the thing is the dynamic of talking about, well, Ace, I can't go out every day and I don't have the time to do. I'm not asking you every second of the day, living, breathing, just like I must advocate for everybody. But simple things, affirming that person at the coffee store when maybe I always have my rainbow lanyard on, and to affirm people, that simple thing. I'm not even talking to them. I have a rainbow lanyard on to affirm people in a space to know that there are people that they can be confident in. If they feel unsafe, they can come to me.
Right.
Whether it's with a smoothie, like that you take whether it's a smoothie or whatever it is, they have to come to me if they're uncomfortable. I had that when I worked in management for a large chain for Stop and Shop. Why am I for Stop and Shop? I worked in management. I had someone in that